Hello and welcome to Movie Phone. For Blockbuster Shrinks, press 1. Blockbuster Shrinks is playing now.
All right, you've done it again. You've come and joined us. I'm the Redhead Family Therapy guy,
And a mic.
and this is our podcast. And
Welcome.
and we're talking about a good one, Stargate.
Yes.
I really liked this show a lot when I was a kid, and I was really reminded of why I liked it because as a kid, I was fascinated by the pyramids. I was totally fascinated. I think I did like probably 4 or 5 book reports over the years on like anytime I was like, do a book report, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm doing it on the pyramids. Because I just thought they were just fascinating. I just
Get your
thought,
encyclopedia out and
yeah,
start
dude, get the botanic. What
reading.
is it? Like Britannica? What
Oh,
was
I can't
the?
remember. Encyclopedia something like that. It was
Yeah,
like
something like that.
Britannica or Britannica.
We had
Man,
like the red ones and the black ones. One time, I totally like built a pyramid and did a cross section.
what'd you build it out of?
It was like cardboard, and then I had
That's
like
cool.
a plastic for the cross section part, and then like I totally like drew the tunnels and everything, and like labeled what was in there and stuff.
Yeah, I really
So
liked this movie as a kid too. I remember watching it, and then I remember when Stargate SG-1 came out on TV,
I didn't
and
try
then
the
I
TV.
watched so I love the whole like Stargate
Does it
franchise has
just
always
carries
been good.
on? Does it just carry on from the movie?
So Stargate SG-1 does carry on from the movie. I'm
I feel
trying.
like I
It's been a
tried.
while since I've seen episode 1, but it does carry on, and it does have the scientist Jackson, and it has the Colonel. Is it O'Neill? I can't remember his name now. Lieutenant Colonel O'Neill. It has both of them, but it has MacGyver as the Lieutenant Colonel, and not
Oh,
yeah,
I
not
feel like I gave it a shot. Like maybe it popped up on Netflix or Hulu or something, and I feel like I gave it a shot, and I just really couldn't get. I think I maybe started it late one night, and like I fell asleep. And if I watch a show and I fall asleep, it's kind of a killer. It's like I don't give it another
you
chance. It's
lose
like
interest.
yeah, it's
I
like if you put
really
me to sleep, and it might not have been the show's fault. It might have just been late and I was tired. So
I really enjoyed Stargate Atlantis. I don't know why, but I really like that series. I watched some of SGU or Stargate Universe, but I only watched like the first season. It was really like sexualized and stuff. It was good, interesting, but it was just like too much. Where that's what I love about Stargate. It's just a sci-fi movie that's really
yeah,
interesting.
it really drew me in, and I feel like they kind of blew it a little bit because it really drew me in, like the whole start of like them finding the gate in the 1920s, and then like him speaking and the way that that scene opens up where they bring him in and he like cracks the code in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like
Uh-huh.
it's just really cool. It's just like really cool. And
Yeah.
then it's like so much more and it's like this portal to some place in the universe, and the fact that it like got all militarized instead of like there was curiosity about the fact that you could go to the other side of the universe, like it was just kind of like I
Well,
feel like the
wasn't
writers blew it because it's like, like I get it,
well
let's keep Earth
94
safe
is
or whatever, but
like isn't 94, 'cause I think it came out in 94, so it was
yeah,
probably kind of filmed and worked on right around, because wasn't Desert Storm right around that time
it
period,
sounds right.
or
No,
the Gulf
no, Desert
Gulf
Storm was way before that. It was because I was in like eighth and ninth grade during Desert
what was
Storm.
going on then
I
in
graduated in 94,
the
so
90s?
it was probably some kind of Middle Eastern war,
Gulf War, maybe it was the
probably.
Gulf War. And I feel like, that
That was just
probably
on the mind.
influenced. Oh, here we go. Gulf War, August of 1990 to January of 91. And so, that's probably like right there
Mm,
before, or maybe right around the time they
yeah.
started filming. So maybe it took over. The one thing that was interesting to me to kind of ride on this sediment that you're having, it was really interesting to me that they sent everyone through the gate, even though they knew the plan was that Luke, is it Lieutenant Colonel O'Neill or Colonel O'Neill,
Kurt
or
Russell.
yeah, what
I
is
don't remember the
his?
character name. I didn't remember.
Even though they knew he wasn't coming back and he was just destroying the gate, so why'd they even send everyone through to begin with? I didn't really. understand that plot line. Like they should have
Support,
just sent
yeah.
him through. I mean, you don't have a movie if you don't send everyone through.
Right. Yeah,
But
I
but
see your
that
point. It's like if
plot
you wanna
point was a
blow
little
it up, then
confusing.
just send in one guy with the bomb.
Yeah, because then you
Yeah.
don't risk all these other people's lives. You just
Right.
risk the person's life who's
Well,
going to die anyways.
and I think I also was bothered because it's like, I don't military people wouldn't, like, start that infighting, like, that wouldn't like, you're going to the other side of the universe through a gate, like, there's risk, like, man up, and they had this, like well, and the one guy that's kinda like the whiny, complainy guy that is, like, picking on him when they get over there, like,
Oh
didn't even
yeah,
have any
from
he, like,
Seventh
didn't
Rock from the
yeah, and he,
Sun.
like yeah, he didn't even, like, have any muscles or anything, I'm like, "This guy's not like the he's not the guy you're sending through the gate." I'm like, "He's got,
Which
like, flabby
anytime I
arms."
see him in a movie, I can only think of him in Third Rock
Third
from the
Rock,
Sun.
yeah.
Sorry, Third Rock from the Sun. I can only think of him as the
That's
alien in
hilarious.
that show, and I'm just like, he's not a tough guy to me in
Yeah,
my mind.
exactly. It's like he's like got guns. He's like, yeah, like it didn't work. So I just feel like it was such a great premise and such a great start. And I love the the discovery of the slave people and the development of the language and how she's like
It ends
betrothed and all
great,
that.
right? Like there's definitely a growth of Kurt Russell where he softens and becomes more human again throughout the movie.
Yeah,
But
which
yeah,
is
they
cool.
definitely start it like you're saying. They start it with the military just being like
That's
over
yeah, it's
like
like
they're just like they just seem like they're a-holes, you
yeah,
know? They're
yeah.
all just these jerks. And I agree. I
It's
don't
like
think that
yeah,
would
it's
be
like
that
you're
way.
yeah, it's like and you're going to the other side of the universe through some magical, like, gate, like, give me a break, dude. That's, like, the
Yeah.
most crazy, exciting,
You
cool
would
thing ever.
definitely all be I feel like you'd be bonded as soon as you realized
Yes.
you're alive on the other
Yes.
side of the gate,
Yes.
right?
Exactly, exactly. Well, and then just the wonder of, like, finding another, like, Earth-like planet and this
Yeah.
other group of people and, like, just the grandeur and, like, "Oh, there's an
But
and
once they
here's a
get
pyramid over here," like, all of that.
yeah, and once they get past that, I feel like then it's great. Like, it really
Yeah.
opens up, and
Yeah.
you kinda forget about that. It subtly comes back at times when Kurt Russell's still trying to blow up the gate, and you're like, "Well,
Come
I can
on, dude.
understand the danger,
Well
but the aliens haven't tried to come back to Earth at all, so
which
why
is really
even worry about it?"
fascinating, which is a really fast I think is that when I first saw it as a kid, I was like, "Why wouldn't they?" Like, why like, you just because there was an uprising so in the uprising, like, little quick montage, like, who got did they just get away and they buried the gate? Like, is it just
Yeah, so uh the humans on Earth ended up uprising and um killing like the I can't remember what they're called, but the guards, right? The human guards that have the
okay,
powers or whatever.
right.
And then Ra left, right?
He just
Ra
left.
escapes. And
Right.
I could see the point of view of that. Like if you have so much power, you're not going to worry about a penny, right? Like let's say you're a
Yeah,
billionaire, you don't care about a penny or probably even
right.
$100 that just is
No.
in the gutter, you're just going to move on because you have all these other resources you can rely on that won't
Right.
give you
Well, and the
trouble.
resources that they're mining at this other planet clearly don't exist on Earth. You know what I mean? So it's not like he
Mhm.
needed them. So you kind of wonder, I guess he needed Earth because that was the malleable body that he was able to kind of
Well, that's where he
perpetuate
took the
life
humans
through.
from. Yeah,
Right.
that's where he
Right.
took them to settle them on these other
But
planets.
but then again too, it's like again the storyline for this alien that wanted to prolong his life, because he's the only alien, right? The
It's
Pharaoh is the
yeah,
only alien.
yeah.
All the other ones are humans, right? That he's just sanctioned as his guard. And so it's just kind of an empty it's like when you think about, well, what's this guy, you know, driven by or sustained by? It's like, we're talking thousands of years and he just minions over these his little like pedophile ring of like, kids around him. Like, it's just like, I just don't know. It's like, well, why would that be the life you want for thousands of years? It
Well,
just
it's
seems a little
interesting, right? Because he's alone and he's drawn to extremes. And Kurt Russell is also experiencing the same thing in the beginning of the movie where he feels alone. Him and
yeah,
his wife are obviously
yeah,
distanced. His
mhm,
child has killed himself on accident, I think was the idea with
Yeah,
a
right.
gun.
Mhm.
And so Kurt Russell is alone and he's drawn to extremes just like the alien, except for
Right.
Kurt Russell's like, I'm just going to another planet and I'm going to blow it up. I don't care if I die. I don't care what happens.
Right.
And so it's interesting how when we're alone and we feel like there's no hope of having really like any of that connection, we can go to such extremes
Yeah.
in life, and we see it all the time. And so I could see how the alien kind of went towards this idea of I'm just gonna
Roll
control
in rain.
everyone just to control everyone, because he's lost everything and everyone or thing that
Yeah, if he's the
they
last of
had.
his species or whatever.
Hmm.
It's an interesting idea of just being kinda suspended in isolation and
Well, and
nobody could ever.
I mean, I love I love space. I think it's such an
Yeah.
interesting thing, and it's so interesting, because you think about it. But in these states of mind where we feel so alone, we can't really think rationally. But as the movie watcher, I'm thinking this alien can't be the only alien. I mean, if
That's
the
how they
alien found a
that's how
life
they
form elsewhere, there must be other life forms out there in
yeah,
this
you'd think,
universe.
right? That's a good point. I
But they
mean, that's
kind
how
of
they portray the story. They portray the story that he's the last of his kind, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, he might be the last of his kind, but there's got to be other life forms out there
oh,
besides
sure.
humans, and they kind of portray it as if he had to use humans to populate these other
Right,
or this other
because 'cause they're
planet.
so easily fixed.
Yeah, that he did
All
mention
he's
that.
gotta do all you gotta do is throw him in his little coffin, and they get regenerated. It's like, "Hey, man,
Yes.
how about" like, I love how there's no talk about, like, maybe we should try to figure out that tech and get it. Like,
Well, at least in the movie, right?
it's
Because
like,
in the movie they're just trying to really survive because
yeah, get
they
back to
have no
Earth.
idea what they're really going up against. Um, and then as time goes on they kind of figure out, okay, we think it's just one alien, right? He sees the would those be petroglyphs? I think those are petroglyphs. What are the other ones called? There's petroglyphs, and then there's the I can't remember what the other ones are called, but anyways, that gives them some information, right, that Ra is an alien and everyone else is human.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it was very intriguing. The other thing that strikes me too is, like, the acting was really good. The guy that plays, like, kind of I don't know, the leader of that human slave enslaved group. I thought like they it
Yeah.
was the acting was all like really good. And I really like this scientist guy. Like I just really like his persona and how he carried himself in the movie. Like I just felt like it fit and worked really well. You know what I
Yeah, they
mean?
had a lot of really good casting.
Yeah.
Everyone except for just I mean, Third Rock from the Sun guy makes sense because he's an alien, but he just doesn't make sense as a soldier. They should have
No,
had him
that
be
did
Raw.
no, that did not work. I was really intrigued too by like when they're in the city and the warning bells are going off because of the sandstorm. And then when the one guy realizes like, "Oh, it was they were freaking out because of the sandstorm." He's real like apologetic. You know, the second in command or whatever is real apologetic to the people about like, grabbing everybody and putting
Yeah.
guns to head. I thought it was really interesting. I was like, "Oh, that's a really interesting, like, nod of apology." I just felt like it had depth and grace, you know?
Yeah, I feel like there was some genuine humanness in the acting and the portrayal of finding the civilization they're offering. They're offering things. At first, they think these are somehow gods connected to Ra or something, right? Because he has
Right,
that
right, and then they're
James Spader, yeah, has
exposed.
the
Yeah.
necklace on, or Jackson. Jackson has the necklace on. But then it does develop into just it seems genuine, and they do at some point understand these are not the same people as Raw. Like these are just
Right.
people that are there, and
Yeah,
and I
there's no
don't think
superpowers.
that wouldn't have happened though without Jackson, right? Without the
Mhm.
James Spader character, because he was so genuine, and that's what
Right.
I think is so identifiable with his character, and he does so well, is just plays a genuine person.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's really and the way the betrothal like
Yeah.
works out is really fascinating. I mean, that's how it works. You go to another planet, you get a beautiful woman betrothed to you
Yes. Yes. She just
instantly.
shows up. Right.
You know, it was interesting to me, you know, based on part of our discussion in our last podcast in Silverado about the nature of social order and social structures kind of stood out to me again with this show and the uprising of the people against the tyrannical power, you know.
Yeah.
It got me thinking about like the how that's sustained and how that's maintained. And, you know, and it's interesting, you know, when that flips, you know, it flips in one respect because the for whatever reason, the slave community like identifies and wants to emulate, you know, the Marines or whatever.
Yeah.
And then yeah, and then their realization when it's when they're not when they're you know, declothed of their headdresses or whatever, which
Yeah.
I
They see
thought
they're
was like, how
human.
could you fight with one of those on? It's like really impractical. It's like, oh
Yeah,
my
there must
god.
be I'm sure it's some type of tech, right? Where it probably gives you like a screen view
Yeah,
inside of
maybe
like
it's like
everything around you
right.
or something like
It's like a
that.
little cumbersome to be like swinging those staffs, those shooting staffs around
Some
with the
ultralight
like you
metal.
can't turn your head, like you can't look behind you, like it's weird. But yeah, I got thinking about that whole like sense of social order and structure and how quickly. I mean, you know, it's a movie, and so of course they're going to move through it pretty quick. But how they uprise. You know, actually, my movie watching got really interrupted because I couldn't find it anywhere to watch,
Yeah,
and
Stargate in general is
I
all
didn't
the
have
seasons are
Cinemax or
hard.
the Cinemax. It was on Cinemax through Hulu or Prime. And so my wife found it on some website. And so like the last 10 minutes I got cut off. So
Oh no.
I'm not actually like remembering exactly because from when I watched it however many years ago. So you got to tell me what I saw right up to when they're storming. And I remember like that he's overthrown and I remember that he got defeated or something because of those the elevator technology. Is that what he does?
Yeah.
He sends the bomb up into the ship when it's pulling away or something, right? Isn't that what happened?
Yeah, because they can't figure out how to turn it off. So of course, once again, the military in this movie is like the evil people for whatever reason.
Always. It always
And
is. The
so
industrial the
yeah, and
military
so
industrial complex is always bad guy.
and so the whoever armed or whoever created the bomb create it in a way that once it's armed it can't be reversed, and not even Colonel O'Neill knew that, and so they couldn't unarm it to give themselves time to get through the gate, so they ended up using the dead warrior guy's button on his hand,
Hand.
yeah,
This is the
to
elevator
bring the
button.
thing down, and they destroy. So at that point Ra's dead, so I
He's
don't know if it
toast.
really matters if the gates
Yeah, it's
closed
like
or
yeah,
destroyed or not, right?
doesn't need to be it. Yeah, at this point anymore, right?
Well, and
And do
interestingly
they
enough,
show the fulfillment of them all like who goes back through the gate?
everyone except for Jackson.
Oh,
Jackson
he
stays.
stays back
Yeah,
with the people
he
there.
does. Well, and it's
Uh,
interesting enough because Colonel O'Neill, is in this place where he's just kind of follow orders, do what I'm told. So he's still going to blow up the gate, but Ra doesn't travel to that planet with a gate, so I'm guessing he probably could travel to Earth without a gate. I don't know.
yeah,
Maybe
man.
his
I mean,
home
probably
system's close to that
take a
planet or
little bit of
something.
time, or maybe he needs the resources.
True.
Maybe he couldn't retain the resources to make the trip all the way out and back, or whatever. For whatever reason, this planet has this
That's true.
unidentified element or whatever.
I to
That
go back to your point though, I really enjoyed the scene where they they're able to knock over one of the raw um the one of Ra's like protector, I don't know, soldiers, one of Ra's soldiers. They knock
Mhm.
him over at like the slave encampment where they're mining the mineral,
Mhm.
and then I think it's Colonel O'Neill presses the button and his
I thought it
the
was the scientist guy is what
headdress.
I
Oh, okay, so
remember.
Jackson presses the
I
button
think so. Because he's like,
headdress
see, they're not anything special." Yeah.
and the headdress comes back, right? And it reveals it's just a human. And I loved that scene because I think, how often do we have gods in our life, right? That really,
Mhm.
they really
False gods.
consume, yeah, they consume all of our, we think they're more important or they're more powerful or they're more this. And we have these moments in life where we have this realization, whether it be with a compulsive behavior, a habit addiction, or maybe it just
Mhm.
be with a relationship, or maybe it just be with TV watching, or whatever it might be, food. We have these moments where we realize, wait, that thing doesn't actually have more power than me. It doesn't have power over me. I have the ability to move forward and to do what I want. And I love that scene because there was such this realization moment for the leader. And I don't know the actor's name, but he's in a lot of different stuff. But
Yeah, he's in
that,
the new Chosen, he was Nicodemus in the Chosen
yes.
series.
And that actor, I love how he has this realization moment. And I just thought it was so profound because it's symbolic to us in our lives. And if it was Jackson that was there, he said, "Hey," he said something about, "Are your gods so powerful now, or so scary now?" Or I can't remember the exact line he uses. And I just thought how
Oh, that's an interesting
powerful
point.
that is, to think about how often do we place things or people or objects or habits in so much power in our lives
Yeah.
when they don't have
Well,
any power at all, really.
that makes me think of is that realization that you come to when you realize your parents are normal people.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? I, like, really remember the moment
And it's
where, I can't I know I was in, like, I think I was in ninth grade, and I remember going at it with my dad over some kind of argument about something, and, like, I won the argument. It was, like, clear as day that, like, his logic wasn't making sense, and I was making a case for something, and he had this moment where he paused, and I was like, "Holy crap." It was like that whole realization of, like, the thing, the place that your parents are, he became humanized in that moment. Not only humanized, but I was able to see past some limitation or whatever that he had, and that was really significant too in regards to where I was in relationship to my parents and their struggles and what I realized, and then how that changed, or what I thought about what they were struggling with and how I started to order, where my life was gonna go and where it's ended up, you know what I mean? That's really significant. Well, and
and
the
that
other side of that too, Michael, is, like, the fact that we do need something
yeah.
in our life that is bigger. You know what I mean? So in one respect, it is like, do we have false gods that we give power that really have no business having power over us? And then, the significance of having something that is bigger than us that we reverence, or, puts us in a place in the world where we can, lack of a better word, have faith in, you know.
Well, I think that's really where trying to have emotional stability, or trying to have tools that allow us to ground and to be mindful of the moment so that we can actually self assess and be real with ourselves, to ask the questions of, is this really what I desire? Is this really
Mhm.
moving me in the direction that will give me the outcome that I'm looking for? Or is this thing just a pseudo, right? Is it a
Do you think
filler?
Do you think people don't do you think one of the challenges is that people just don't take the time to ask that question?
Well, I think we're so busy that the easy option is just to deal with the crisis in front of our face,
Survive.
which, yeah, and for that crisis is whatever that crisis is for that person, right? It could, for me it could be, just getting through the day and not feeling sick because I've been sick the last 2 weeks. But for someone else it could be getting food on the table, and that crisis becomes so blinding, right? That I think we don't have room to
Or it puts
breathe.
you in a distressed state, so it's more survival oriented versus.
Yeah. And in those moments, just like, we're seeing with Kurt Russell and we're seeing with Raw, in those moments, it's a lot harder to be, maybe have that wise mind, right? And to be able to
Yeah.
take the time to look and to see, But what we learn through good emotional health skills, is that even if we're in those moments, we can use these tools to
Think.
ground ourselves and, yeah,
Yeah.
to get separation from those things. But I think a lot of people just don't have tools, or they've been taught tools, and once they felt better, they stopped using them.
Yeah.
And that's the
Or
important
you just
thing.
get swept. You just get swept into your phone, swept into the rat race, let's say.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And so we have to have moments where we maybe assess. And so, one of the thing I talk to people a lot about is when you start feeling better, continue to use the tools. I tell them about, I remember playing sports, and I remember that with sports, we practiced every day, right? Practice, practice, practice. And that way, when the game day came, which was the more stressful time, things just
Yeah.
came natural to us.
Right,
And
yeah,
I
it's
told
muscle
them,
memory.
yeah. And so I tell my clients, that's the idea with emotional health. You want to practice all the time so that when the actual
Mhm,
struggle or the crisis comes, you're
mhm.
more prepared to just do what you need to do to ground or to move forward and to deal with it. And I think that's a struggle with really self-assessing, is that's the same principle. We need to have like a schedule of just taking a moment
Well,
to
I
assess what's going on, but we don't often do that. We just do it when we come to a realization, oh, maybe we should look at what's really going on here.
I think that's another negative byproduct of the general loss of faith, right? Because that's like one of the roles that faith plays in typically in people's lives, unless they just get real rote about it or real cultural about it, that you genuinely are thinking, you are generally assessing. I mean, whether you do that in a disciplined daily way or a weekly way with like, aspects of like our faith with sacrament or whatever. I think that that's one of the real negative byproducts of the fact that faith has really died,
Well,
is
and
that
that's
that's one of the roles that it places for you to step back and really look at your character. And it kind of, I think that that's one of the things that's really interesting about, seeing our culture or folks that are in our faith, and that there is this attitude of growth pretty consistently with, folks that are engaged. And compared to, in general, folks, and there are of course very driven, growth-minded people that aren't faith-oriented or whatever, but I wonder if that's one of the things that has been lost with the loss of faith, you know?
Well, and I think it's interesting that when we look at recovery programs, so many recovery programs have a component of a higher power, and whatever you might view that higher power of, or as, or is. But I think that that's a great point, is that if we lose faith, and we can even take it to a secular notion, right, of faith in just something, faith in
Mhm.
something that
Service,
brings us
giving
comfort and
others,
peace in our life.
giving back more or something.
Yeah. And yet I think what happens is through hardships in life or crisis or trauma, we tend to lose that agency, and our faith really is taken over by something that gives us maybe
Pleasure
momentary pleasure, but
or
but it
escape.
it gets us stuck because we
Yeah.
don't have that long lasting answer. It just gives, and that's why we get
Or there
into, I look at
isn't
my phone all the time, or I
Yeah,
eat, or I
or there isn't an ethic, or there isn't, or there's a vacuum of an ethic or something that calls forth
sure.
something better of you, you know what I mean? Like, that's, I mean, in the way that I relate to our faith, like, I constantly am, there's a backdrop of wanting to develop the ability to be more gracious, or, the ability of being diligent, or frugality, so that there's more resources to do more for my kids, or, there's just there's all of these ethics that are, challenging me and stretching me. And they're good. I mean, you don't have to have, that's why, like, Joe Rogan had a guy talking about the Stoics, and the Stoics were just, I don't know anything about Stoics, but from what I gathered from the conversation, it's, just these essentially philosophers that, just talked about, um the idea of ethic and
Mhm.
idealized principles, to cultivate those, and that those are just a part of a full, fruitful life, you know what I mean? And he talked about 'em, and he really had some just gems of principle, you know what I mean, that he articulated in the discussion that I listened to. It was really good.
Well, I think that, in order to be able to have, I think we're talking really about kind of balance, right? Having more balance in different things that we do for ourselves, which in turn helps us to do the things for others that we would like to do in our life also. And with this balance, I think we do have to slow things down. And it's so interesting, even now compared to when I was a kid, things are so much faster, especially with
Gosh, it's
smartphones
crazy.
and
It's
electron. I mean,
crazy.
you can't get away
Well,
from
everything's so
anything.
instant, and everything's so instant. It's
Yes.
insane. It's insane how
Well, and
instant everything
and
is.
that speeding up, it's so interesting because when we talk about anxiety and we talk about stress, the whole thing with anxiety and stress is everything speeds up. Like when you get
Mhm.
anxious about something, you go 0 to 60
Yeah,
in a
everything's escalated.
millisecond.
Yeah,
And yet we live in a world where everything is sped
it's
up.
fast.
If I
Yeah.
have someone reach out to me through text, you know, a lot of times they're wondering, well, why hasn't he responded? Or they might send a
Right.
follow-up text because they're like, I know you got the text. Like, what's going on? And it's like, well, it's the weekend. I'm not working. It's like
This
I
is
want
not
a
an
day off.
emergency. I'm not
Yeah,
calling you.
yeah, it's not an emergency.
Yeah. Like,
But
I want to unplug, you
but we
know,
all
like,
do
yeah.
that to each other, don't we? Like if I
Sure.
text you and I don't get a response, sometimes I'm like, well, why didn't you respond?
Yeah,
Right?
right. I
What's
thought
going
the
on
same
with
thing.
John?
"What the freak, Michael? I sent you, like, 5 texts. Give me a
But it's
break."
so and so I think we have to find a way to slow things down in a world that is just speeding up. And
It's
for
really hard.
me, I think it means I have to take time to do emotional health exercises. Like I have to take time to do
Yeah.
some breathing or to do some mindfulness or do some grounding. And maybe those exercises only take me a minute or 2 minutes. But if I'm doing that scattered throughout the day, then it helps me to slow things down, even though I'm only taking, a good, I don't know, 15 minutes out of my day to do these exercises throughout the day. And I think that's where exercise is such an important thing,
Yeah.
getting outside and getting exercise done in whatever form. Walking is great,
Yeah.
running or whatever your
Yeah,
thing is,
I've had
biking.
a I've had a way more difficult month this last month, and, yeah, my exercise has been where this year I was daily riding my bike. I really fell off in this last month, and, I felt way worse, and it's weird too, I did a really big bike ride today, and honestly, in the moment, I can't say I got the bump that I'd hoped that I'd get from a big ride today. So I think it's just because, things are just feeling heavy in lots of different aspects of my life. So it's interesting how, but yeah, I think generally those things are really important to have,
Well, and I
you know.
think that's where we get discouraged is we do something, and then it doesn't work, not understanding that consistency pays off, right?
Yeah.
So the more consistent we are with these emotion management tools, the more payoff we will get. It doesn't mean we have absence of symptomology, right? If you're struggling with something, you could go on a huge bike ride and still experience that emotion, but the payoff just is exponential as we're consistent with it. But the hard thing in life, in a life where right now everything's immediate, the hard thing with that, and especially, younger kids growing up now, even like my girls, it's like they expect, oh, why is it taking so long? Because everything's immediate.
Right.
And so in that type of culture, when we do something for a week and we don't notice a difference, it can be very discouraging, right? Or we've done something and then we maybe slack off a little bit and we're not doing it as consistently, and then we do it again and don't get the same benefit. It can be very discouraging and we think it's not worth doing because we have this culture of immediacy, right?
Yeah.
And yet, you know there's so many things, and we've talked about this before, so many things that built resilience in our lives in the past. There's things now that do, but a lot of just things that were just common day occurrences that we
Well, it's
dealt with.
because everything is quick. I mean, you
Yes.
can get everything right now in America. It's really bizarre. It's
It's
bizarre.
amazing, but it's not
Yeah,
the
it's
healthiest thing.
convenient. Well, and it makes us all so soft, you know what I mean? Like, it's so soft. I mean, just
Yeah,
the
when
fact
my
that
I there was a like, what was it, 6 months ago? my Amazon deliveries were taking like 4 or 5 days, and I was like, "What the heck? What the heck? It should be here
I have to wait
tomorrow." Like,
4
I'm
days for
paying
my
for 4 or
Legos?
5 days, like, what is going on?
That's hilarious.
And that's just an example of, in the past, like, when I was a kid, I remember doing melon or, like, mail order things. It would take, like, a month, to get something back because 'cause you'd had
I
to
was
send it in, and then they have to process it,
it's
send it back.
I bought my road bike, my really nice road bike, which I paid a ton of money for. I bought it secondhand, but I bought it from, like, Russia, from
Yeah,
this
I
private
remember.
seller in Russia, and
Mhm.
I was so stressed. 'Cause it took forever, man. It sat in customs in Russia for, like, a month, and then it sat in customs for, like, a month in the US, and, I mean, part of the stress is, like, did I get duped? You know what I mean? Which
Yeah.
I had a fail-safe already worked out if it turned out to be a dupe, but, so I wasn't gonna lose my money, but, yeah, I remember just being completely just racked with impatience, you know what I
Which
mean?
is awesome because did you, like, learn anything from that experience? Did it open your mind to knowing that, hey,
No, I think I
even
was
though
just
things are hard, it still can have some type of conclusion?
I mean, I was
We can have
excited.
pain
I mean,
and come out the other end?
I was so excited to get it, and I freaking love my bike too. I mean, it's a great bike.
Well, I think that's the
So,
hard thing is that anytime we experience pain now, since we're in immediate gratification, it's like there should be absolute like, that should go away immediately. But then
yeah.
experience like you had, there's pain and discomfort, and it was for a prolonged period of time, and then at the end, you have this experience, this resilience built to show, "Hey, I
I
can
don't
deal with
know.
that.
I
I
got a
can
thing in
handle that."
I got a thing in my life right now that's it's taken forever, and I don't think I'm developing resilience, dude. It's
Remind
just
yourself of your
frustration.
bike. What happened with your bike? It showed up, right? Even though it took forever, it still showed up. And that's
Yeah,
the part of resilience that I think we really struggle with is
yeah,
remembering these experiences in our life where we've dealt with
yeah.
or uncomfortable, um, hard things, and it worked out.
I think that's another really common thing that a lot of times we can be exposed to information that's, quote unquote, the answer. But
Mhm.
the application, because the application takes effort or the application's difficult or it's not the answer we want, I think we remain in a state of frustration or a state of
Well, and
unhappiness or
I
whatever. And
think
the work of really putting the answer to apply it is something that then we think there's no answer, and it's like, no. I mean, I feel like that a lot with my addiction clients. It's like, I'll map it out, and it's like the answers are right here. Like there's a couple of there's like 3 to 5 major principles that undergird recovery that I've got really worked out as a counselor. Like, I get what it takes. None of it's easy. I'm not It's simple, but it's not easy, but
the
I can map it
application is
out.
hard, but
I
principle is
can map it
simple.
out in like 3 to 5 principles, you know what I mean? But, the work of internalizing that and consistently being engaged in that is hard, and
Well, and
it's
I
like
think
people want some other answer, usually something that's quick and easy, and it's like, that's not how this is gonna go, you
Well, and
know?
I think oftentimes what plays into that is we have an idea or an expectation in our head, and when we have realization that that's not realistic, we fight against that because I see shame present in that moment of I'm inadequate, I'm bad because I'm now not able to actualize what I thought was realistic or attainable. And now I have someone telling me otherwise. And what happens? What's the secondary emotional response to shame? It's criticism, it's anger, it's frustration. And I think so often times people, and as therapists we see this because we work with it so often, but I think people, they fail to see that I'm just feeling like I'm not good enough, I'm bad, I'm inadequate, and they fail to see that, and what instead they see is frustration, criticism, anger with the process, and then their mind takes that and cycles it around to shame again. Well,
Mhm.
someone who was good enough wouldn't respond that way.
Do you imagine if you could get, like, society at large to get out of criticism and into self-reflection? Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
revolutionary would it be?
it's
Because criticism
so
is just so
painful though, right?
that's hard, man.
And that's why it's so hard to get people there, including myself, including yours.
Sure.
Like it's hard
Yeah,
for any of us
absolutely. I'm guilty
because
all the
it's
time.
so painful.
Well, and
And yet
you have to be
the growth
so
is so
you have to be so self-aware. I
mhm.
mean, and you in that sense, you've gotta be in that wise mind. You've gotta, like, when faced with a distressing moment, you have to, like, slow down when any of those negative emotions start to arise and
Yeah.
go,
Well, and when you're stuck in that shame, and then you have all these examples that your mind is using as reinforcement to prove that you
"You are
are
actually a piece
bad.
of crap." Yeah.
Yeah. It's so daunting and so hard.
It is, man.
And it really just tears you apart. And it becomes that much harder to think, oh, maybe if I did this or if I did that, it would feel better. It also makes it harder for you to realize that working through this in the way that maybe you and I tell people, here's the tools, using those tools seem hopeless,
Yeah.
right? And
Well,
and and also you have past experiences where maybe you did it and you felt good, but it's not enough of a memory ingrained in your brain for your
yeah, the
brain
bump
to
small
accept
well,
that as an
because
answer.
you've gotta activate a bunch of new neural pathways, right? With
Mhm.
I mean, when it comes down to the actual brain stuff, you've gotta activate these different neural pathways, which are dormant, and so until that gets a lot of use, then it's not gonna happen.
Well, it's like
I've
any
r
muscle, right? You've got to
Mhm.
have consistency and you've got to have a lot of it. It takes
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
and that's really hard.
I'm really convinced that a huge aspect of mental health stuff is really organized around the way that we relate to ourselves. You know,
Yeah.
the story that we have about ourselves and the way that we treat ourselves. I really more and more and more and more it comes back to that, that the rut of the negative narrative that people because of
Well,
bad decisions or because of trauma
so
is just worn in.
we all have that, right? We all have this rhetoric that we develop throughout life about ourselves based on our perspective of events that happen.
And that's huge, our perspective, because
Yes.
sometimes our perspective is wrong. Like,
Well,
it's
but
really
here's the
important to
thing,
realize that. Like,
and that's
sometimes the way that you've interpreted somebody doing something to you, like, it's real in the fact that that's what you perceive. But if that's not what they intended, then it's not what it was, in one respect, it's not what it
well,
was, though we had the emotional experience that it was, and that's so
yes,
important to be able to identify and surrender, because if
sure,
you won't let that bone go, then it's like, well, you are a piece of crap, you know what I mean? Because that's why they did it, they did it because
yes,
they didn't love you, and it's like, there's nothing about that's why the person did that. I appreciate that that's what you're taking away from it, it's understandable, like, it's a reasonable conclusion to make, but it's not what they like, you have to listen to what the other person is like, "No, that's not what I was trying to do," you know?
yes. Well, and I think that's important because we have we have times where I experience something that can be very traumatic to me. But then to another person, they're like, "Oh, no, that's easy," because it's our perspective, right? And that's why we can't minimalize trauma in different lives or
Yeah,
minimalize their self
experience.
view, their
Right,
rhetoric, their story that they've made about
right. Well,
themselves.
if you
And I
minimize it, then it's just, "You don't get me,"
yeah,
you know?
well, because then it feeds the rhetoric.
Right,
It feeds the
right.
rhetoric. Yeah, I think what comes out is you don't get me and you just don't care about me. But really, what's inside of that
Yeah,
is the story's true. Here's
right.
another example of
Of why
someone.
you're going to leave me
Yeah,
and everybody leaves me.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I do, we have environmental factors, we have genetic factors that all
Mhm.
pile in. But I think the important thing to realize is that story and that rhetoric that we make about ourselves and the perspective we have, that is everyone in this world, regardless of our environment or our genetics.
Mhm.
Now we add in environment and we add in genetics, and I do, yeah, I think there are people
Diet,
that are
sleep,
gonna
stress.
struggle even more with those self views because of that. But that, or maybe their self view, the switch flips quicker because of a genetic predisposition or an environmental
Absolutely.
upbringing. But the fact of the
Culture.
matter is, we all have
It's very universal.
this self view, and our ability to deal with it may differ depending on those other things.
Mhm.
But the fact of the matter is we all struggle with a self view, and so many people will deny that,
Yeah.
and so often,
Well,
and
that
that's
yeah,
the
to be
shame, right?
vulnerable. Well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
being naked. It's like, I wanna cover
Hmm.
up. I don't want you to see
But if we
the
could all
naked
know we
truth.
all have it, we all experience that self view and that perspective and make a
Yeah.
meaning about ourselves, then maybe it'd be easier to be like, oh yeah, I experienced that. Maybe it's different than you, but there, we both feel similar things
Mhm.
like shame. We both feel similar things like inadequacy. Maybe
Do
not
you
as
do you think it
often,
is
but
do you think it is the most common denominator that correlated to attend like, t and the relationship that the shame has to attachment is just, like, the core thing?
oh man, I really think so. The longer I've done therapy and the more people I've worked with, I really just feel like that is true. It's hard to be, to really be absolute in anything, right? Especially in
Yeah,
our
sure.
line where
Especially with
everything's
behavior,
different. Yeah.
yeah, behavior and
But
family relationships and
I
culture.
really feel like that's a common thread for sure.
Do you know where this is gonna sound crazy, but, one of the places that it becomes really convincing to me is, I don't know if you've ever heard of this show, it's called Married at First Sight,
Oh,
and
I've heard of it, but I've not
there's
seen
like
it.
there's like 11 seasons or something, and I think we've
Holy
Nick and I
cow.
have watched most of them. And it's like these 3 professionals or whatever, like one's a MFT, one's like a pastor, a social worker, and one's like a psychologist or whatever. And they, like, have all these people that come in that agree to marry a person sight unseen matched by the
Mhm.
experts. And it's really fascinating to me after the little like, if they're digging each other, if there's fireworks and attraction, which in most cases, I would say that there are, um, how quickly it breaks down because I can see as a marriage and family therapist, they're bidding for attachment
Yeah,
and
and it's not being
perceiving
met.
rejection,
Mhm.
with when in a lot of cases, like, the experts have really done a good job of matching personality type. And it's like, because I can imagine that these individuals are filling out these forms, really saying what they really do want in a partner, but they're
Yeah,
sabotaging or rejecting what they're being offered because of all of these perceptions. And I'm like, what? They need to hire me as their therapist so that I could get in early. Because it's like if they would get in early, if they would do like an hour or a 4-hour intervention on the honeymoon when they're
sure.
in the honeymoon, and if they just did a little bit of assessment work to help the contestants or the people that have entered into the show, a little bit of research so that they could be articulate about what their thing is,
Yeah,
and both, be articulate about the thing and then be educated about what their other person's thing is, and then given some tools to negotiate that, there could be so many more successful marriages. Because in a lot of cases, they really do an incredible job of matching up the people, they really do, and it's so
so they're
sad to me.
basically like arranged marriages.
Yeah, they're
And
arranged marriages. Yeah,
the
and some of them have
interesting
really worked out well. Like, there's some pretty fascinating stories, and the success rate's low, dude. It's like probably 20 to 30%, you know what I mean? Where
well,
they
and there's
because they
probably
do it
other
for
factors that play
oh,
into
sure.
that,
Oh,
right?
there's a billion other yeah,
Culture
yeah, tons of
resilience, and
yeah, all kinds of things.
it's
But, like,
interesting.
there's some really cool stories that have come out of it, like, some really couples that, you can find them on Instagram, they've been on the show, and now they're
That's
married and they've got kids.
cool.
It's really fascinating, but and so it's just tragic to me. I'm like, "Dude, hire me because 'cause I'm telling you, you guys are missing a moment here. You've got a moment here. If you did some proactive interventions, you
Yeah.
could really set up some more success, because that's my biggest frustration. My biggest frustration is that, because marriage is like my thing, I'm getting people coming in, on year 14, year 17, where things
Mhm.
are so entrenched, so many misunderstandings are entrenched, the attachment injuries are entrenched. Instead of like, if I could work with couples consistently in the first year and then maybe again in 3 years and just help them know themselves and help them apply like a bunch of the EFT tools,
Well, yeah, I
and the
think
Gottman tools. Oh my gosh, dude,
I
the
feel like
marriage rates would go through the roof.
I
The
agree, and
divorce
I
rates.
feel like Sue Johnson's EFT and John Gottman's, I think John and Julie, but John and Julie's Gottman marriage therapy
Research
modalities
stuff.
are
Yeah.
really great models. But the thing with marriage therapy is it takes a level of buy-in, and
It's
sometimes
not
it's
hard to
really
get it
hard
though.
to get the
I
buy-in.
don't I don't I
And
don't
not
feel
only
like,
that,
not
it's
if they're not
really
damaged.
tough.
If
And
they're
not only that, it
damaged,
mhm,
it's hard,
yeah.
but like if it's early, like if they're in the fallen in love phase, it'd be super easy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got you.
No, no, you're good. All right. I don't know where we went, but there was a marriage component part to Stargate, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah,
were
like he was
betroothed.
just
He didn't
betrothed.
know it. Like
He's all like,
it
"Wait,
was
we're married?"
arranged.
He's like, "Wait, you married me? You want to be married to me?"
Yeah, yeah. Wait, this happened?
Which works, right? Because he's been stripped. He doesn't have an apartment. All of the things he has are in those two bags or
Yep,
whatever.
he's got nothing, right? He's the
And so
perfect person to stay there,
to be
right?
thrown to another planet and live in a
And then
desert.
I think the sad thing, I think in SG1 when it picks up, I swear they have James Spader in the first episode if I'm remembering right. I might be misremembering. I think they have him in it. And I think he's back on Earth. I don't think he's like I
He's
don't know
not.
what
He doesn't have
happened.
the
Yeah, I
lady.
don't know if they ever finished that
They got
storyline or
divorced.
not. I
Nah,
don't know.
dude. She wouldn't divorce
They're
him. They
part of the
screwed that one up.
20% of the arranged.
They messed that up. There's no way that girl was going to divorce him from the Sand
I
Planet.
can't
Give me a
remember,
break.
or maybe they mentioned. I'll have to watch episode 1 again. It's been so long. Stargate in general, all the Stargate shows are really hard to find. I don't know if in the US they just stopped putting them on streaming services, but they're really hard to find anywhere.
Some weird company owned him and like wouldn't sell it or something.
Yeah, which doesn't make sense, right? Wouldn't Isn't that the point of making something like that, is to sell it?
Yeah. Yeah. License it out. Right.
It was a great one, guys. I
Good
Stargate for
times.
me, these 80s, 90s, even 70s with Star Wars, right? These older sci-fi shows and sci-fi
Best.
movies always just are so nostalgic to me because I love sci-fi.
I did too, man. Well,
All
good
right.
times, my folks.
Thanks everyone. Adios, amigos.